Today about a lot of things on the live stream. I did not expect to be doing a live stream today, but Chris White is not going to be doing any live streams today. So I will go ahead and do my live stream, and then I'll be done before 1 o'clock when Ronaldo hosts does his live stream, 1 o'clock U.S. Central Time. I believe it's 8 o'clock South Africa time. But how you guys doing? Hope all is well. So let me get this posted to the Telegram group right quick. If you guys want to, come in, and just hang on 1 second. So hope everybody's well. Just hang on 1 second. Okay, hope everybody is doing well. More on the debacle of Joe Biden in Afghanistan. Biden did a very cowardly thing by withdrawing from Afghanistan the way that he did. And recently there had been a bomb by ISIS-K, which is a branch of ISIS in Afghanistan, that killed 13 U.S. service members, and then more than 100 other people were wounded. And that is just a tragic situation with what happened in Afghanistan. Now, to the U.S. military's defense, the U.S. military did launch drone strikes, which have killed this. I have mixed feelings about, you guys know how I feel about the COVID-19 vaccine, okay? And I don't like some of what is clearly medical misinformation on this vaccine. And Biden is encouraging social media companies to not allow it. And I can understand why they do it, because I firmly believe unless somebody has a prior allergic reaction to vaccines in the past, or they've had a family history of allergic reactions to vaccines, or if they're not sure, or if they have an underlying medical condition and the doctor says no, then you don't need to get it. But other than that, I think people should. You guys know that. But at the same time, I ran into twice and says, hey, Brett, hey, Rainier, how are you? But on the other hand, I do believe in freedom of speech. And freedom of speech states that that people should be able to say whatever they want to say, and I worry if the administration does this and censors anti-vaxxers on social media. Then when the COVID crisis is over, they're going to keep that in place and not undo it. And here is how U.S. law works, okay? During the Civil War, President Lincoln, to keep Maryland from seceding, because Virginia seceded from the United States, and Virginia surrounded the Union capital of Washington, D.C. Well, Maryland, a lot of Marylanders were pro-Confederate, but what Lincoln did was he suspended constitutional rights and habeas corpus in Maryland. But after the war was over, he also jailed plenty of newspaper opponents of the Civil War in the North, and plenty of war opponents. But when the war was over, he let them go and he pardoned them, and he says we're not going to have ex post facto law, which what ex post facto law is if something was legal at the time, but you do it illegal, you can't get punished in the future once something becomes legalized. So when the war was over, it was over. Things were over, and people that did not have a criminal record, Maryland had its constitutional rights restored. And that was kind of understood. So the law in the U.S. basically is the government has a right to do those things in the time of crisis, but once the crisis is over, then the government has to go back to normal and restore constitutional rights. And that's how it's always been mostly throughout the history of America. But nowadays, I honestly do not trust either political party to do like Lincoln and to honor restoring the Constitution once the pandemic is over. So I have mixed feelings about that. And one of the reasons that I do is because you guys saw how the stream was just interrupted when I talked about how I believe that Biden cowardly evacuated from Afghanistan and is not handling it well. Well, then the phone just shut off. And I've had difficulties on my phone. I'm not saying it was the phone or it was, but the way big tech companies are monitoring people nowadays, and we've all seen it on Chris Wyatt's stream, I have mixed feelings on that. And Cameron Engelbrecht says, hey, Brett, as well. Hey, Cameron, how are you? I try to make it a point to answer everybody's typed in messages, even if it's not super chats, and no matter how random the message may be, because I can be the king of random comments. A lot of times you guys see me on Chris's stream. This is how I roll, just my personality. So I don't hold it against you guys. All right, so that's where I have mixed feelings on that. I'll ask you guys what you think on this. Not necessarily the vaccine, but I do, like I said, believe in freedom of speech. I don't belong to the Libertarian Party. I don't belong to QAnon or any of those groups, but I also don't believe we should be permanently trying to shut down these people or shut down Rand Paul just because I might disagree with them on certain aspects. So back to Afghanistan. Now, to Biden and the U.S. military's credit, they launched a drone strike after the terrorist bombing of ISIS-K in the Kabul airport, where 13 U.S. service members were killed. And the drone strike did kill a key ISIS-K leader. And Biden says this is not going to be the last strike, but he also has said that the evacuation is going to go, the evacuation is going to go as scheduled, and the evacuation is going to go as planned. Well, evacuating Afghanistan and leaving it to the Taliban is a big mistake. And I'm normally critical of CNN, but they did a good job interviewing some schoolgirls in Afghanistan, and the schoolgirls basically said the Taliban lied to them. The Taliban said they could be allowed to continue to go to school, that they could be allowed to get a vocation where they could work. Well, as soon as the Taliban took control of their village, the Taliban sent all the girls home. So the Taliban is lying, saying they're going to respect women's rights more. No, you can't trust the Taliban. They're the group that refused to hand over Osama bin Laden to the U.S. authorities for many years. And so you just cannot trust a group like that. And then Russia, China, and Turkey, just to name a few, are going to formally recognize the Taliban-led government in Afghanistan. So I know some people really admire Vladimir Putin or think he's doing the right things in Russia. I don't. His approval rating has gone below 50%. And he has had a lot. He has recognized the Maduro regime in Venezuela. He has recognized the Castro regime in Cuba. He has recognized several Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Putin is not somebody to be trusted. He's an ex-KGB agent who had cried when the Soviet Union collapsed. I mean, he's interested in one thing, and that's basically power. And I don't trust him. And that is why I think it's dangerous if conservatives start quoting him or using his examples, because Putin is like that. All right, I know it's winter in South Africa. It is, but in the U.S. right now, we're having to deal with Hurricane Ida. And one thing Ronaldo Host had told me about South Africa is you guys typically do not have to deal with hurricanes, typically don't have to deal with tornadoes, typhoons, anything like that. Well, Mississippi borders the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I'm not on the Gulf Coast. I used to live on the Gulf Coast, and so did my brother for a little while, not long for me. But hurricanes were a nuisance there, right on the Gulf of Mexico. And hurricanes typically originate in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, Hurricane Ida did not hit Mississippi, but it hit, well, we've got some rain, but it mostly hit Louisiana. And the Louisiana area is tore up. Not as bad as Hurricane Katrina. And John Jarvis makes a point. They said define under Sharia. Well, they told the Western government that it was going to be more than that. But yeah, under Sharia law, women basically have zero rights. A lot of women under Sharia law, they have to walk through a minefield. The women have to walk through a minefield, so if they accidentally step on it, all the mines will go off, and then the man goes the man goes unharmed. And a lot of women not just can't drive a car under Sharia, but a lot of women can't even ride in the front seat of a car. And that's sick beyond sick. And yeah, and you make a good point, John Jarvis. Basically, women have no rights under Sharia law. But like I said, you can't trust the Taliban. That's just how it is. Somebody had said he wondered if Biden's phoning the South African government for advice. It honestly would not surprise me. Because Biden is basically that incompetent. He's done pretty good with U.S.-South Korea relations. He's keeping our strong relations with democratic Asian countries, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam. And Vietnam, yes, they are a communist country, but they do not like China's encroachment in the South China Sea, and 82% of Vietnamese people nowadays like Americans. So I didn't get upset with that. Kamala Harris taking a picture near the bust of Ho Chi Minh. War is war, peace is peace, and a lot of former North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers have made peace with American Vietnam veterans and have invited them to come visit Vietnam. I know that for a fact because the town that I used to live in, of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Andrew Wiest is a professor of history there, and he teaches a lot on the Vietnam War. He wrote a good book called The Boys of 67. And his students, as well as other Vietnam veterans from the area, were allowed to go visit Vietnam and meet some of the North Vietnamese Army veterans, as well as the Viet Cong Army veterans. So like I said, that picture next to the bust of Ho Chi Minh didn't mean anything. I'm not reading into it. But I will say this: China is not nearly as big of a threat to the United States as is the Taliban, ISIS, and Al Qaeda. Those three groups pose a far greater threat to the U.S. and world security and world stability than does mainland China. And Biden is wrong saying China is the primary threat, not radical Islamic extremism. And take it from somebody who used to teach English for the South Korean Air Force, that is not accurate. It's not accurate at all. And that's just an idiotic and a stupid thing to say. And with that being said, now, when Biden did meet with the Israeli Prime Minister, if you just glance at the TV, it looks like he's sleeping. But if you zoom in, an officer, Brandon Tatum, did a video on this. He wasn't sleeping. It was just a bad camera angle. It was, we need to attack Biden on the issues. And talk about that. But if he's not sleeping, don't say he's sleeping. Don't read into the bust with Ho Chi Minh that Kamala Harris took a picture there. That didn't mean anything. I can promise you it didn't mean anything. But where you can is the embarrassing evacuation in Afghanistan, and not just that, trying to negotiate with the Taliban and not letting the U.S. soldiers leave the airport to go rescue Americans that are stranded in Afghanistan. There are still over 10,000 Americans that are stranded in Afghanistan because of by not letting the U.S. soldiers go in there. Now, some Americans were able to get out because the British military went in and rescued their own citizens, and they rescued a handful of American citizens as well. And I have to commend Boris Johnson for doing something like that. And that is just that was just an amazing thing by Boris Johnson. And but they have, when planes have landed from Afghanistan to other countries where the refugees have settled, they have found people dead in the landing gear. People had tried to go hide in the landing gear in planes to try to get out and escape the Taliban's murderous regime. Now, 391 Afghan refugees arrived in South Korea. These were people that had worked for the South Korean embassy in Kabul, and people that had helped South Koreans either as interpreters or as in Afghanistan, or assisted the South Korean military when the South Korean military came to Afghanistan. And none of these people have ties to the Taliban. The South Korean intelligence service is very, very careful about who they screen coming in. And the 391 of them had arrived. 13 of them arrived later. They were in Islamabad, Pakistan, undergoing further screening, but they all passed the screening test. And then all but 13 of them arrived a day beforehand. And that is what's happened in South Korea. And honestly, I would not have a problem taking in refugees if the U.S. intelligence service was like the South Korean National Intelligence Service, and they screen people very, very carefully who come in as refugees. And they have to, because there have been many North Korean spies who have posed as North Korean defectors. And they're in actuality spies. Actually, when they had the President Park Geun-hye back in 2012, she was elected. Well, shortly after that, there was this North Korean defector that came, but when he got to the airport, the intelligence service in South Korea ran a background check on him, and he was a spy that was an assassin. And he was sent to assassinate President Park Geun-hye. So, like I said, the intelligence service has to be very, very careful of who they let in refugee status, or that's what they'll get. and that has happened before. And so yeah, so that's what we need to do. I don't have a problem with Afghan refugees coming to the country, but they need to be tested for any diseases they may be bringing in. They need to be, because Afghanistan was still a third world country, better than under the Taliban, but even when the U.S. overthrew the Taliban, it was still a third world country. And they also need to be screened thoroughly to make sure they're not Taliban or Taliban sympathizers, because some countries have run into that problem where 10% of those refugees are. And 10%, if you have 600 refugees in a plane and then 60 of them are Taliban sympathizers, 60 people can do a lot of damage to any country. You saw how just 19 hijackers on September 11th, 2001 flew 2 planes into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, and the World Trade Center collapsed, and then flew a plane into the Pentagon. And Eric Olskin said, Albert, so sorry about the situation in Afghanistan. I just logged in, so we'll listen again. Well, hey, Erica, how are you? We're mainly talking about what was going on in Afghanistan, and then also get you guys away on this. As you guys know, I have a different opinion on the vaccine than a lot of you guys. But Biden wants the social media companies to ban a lot of anti-vaccine information. And in my opinion, a lot of it is misinformation. But earlier I was streaming talking about what I thought Biden was doing bad in Afghanistan, and my stream mysteriously shut off. Now, my phone's had difficulties before. I'm relaxed. I'm not accusing the Biden administration of doing this. But it probably was a difficulty to my phone. But we do know we've seen difficulties of people, of Chris Wyatt's stream being frozen or buffering when it didn't seem like there were any technical issues. So, yeah. But, okay, we'll get on South Africa, because that's where most of you guys hail from. And as you guys know, the SABC reported on this in Kata Village. A 74-year-old lady was raped and hacked to death in Kata Village. It is a senseless murder. It was done probably because the person was either high on drugs or just was so angry at the female gender that he decided to just rape the 74-year-old innocent lady and hack her to death. The police don't have any leads or any information from the last I saw. Now, if there are any news updates on the situation, please let me know. But this is a sick situation, and one of the guys who delivered the funeral eulogy had said that if you're a woman in South Africa and you live alone, you're not safe. If you're a woman in South Africa and you sleep alone, he doesn't believe that you're safe. Well, and this has happened during Women's History Month. Excuse me, or Women's Month. And that is just not right to have that happen in Women's, not to have it happen anytime, but especially during Women's Month, when you're honoring women and trying to end gender-based violence, but then stuff like this is going on in South Africa. And that is just a sick, sadistic situation. And, there's got to be stuff done about it. And, I'm going to have to check this because I cannot remember the name, but I do know that 7 people have been arrested in the murder of this, I think she was an Indian hospital administrator, but she may have been a doctor as well. I cannot remember her name, and I apologize for that. But supposedly she was blowing the whistle on the government embezzling a lot of COVID-19 aid and a lot of COVID-19 funds. And she... and she was, they've caught all 7 of the perpetrators, and the perpetrators have been set to appear in court. I'm trying to research the name right here, and gosh, I'm going to probably slap myself in the head because I remember the name earlier, but I cannot. Okay, here we go. Babita Dukaran. Babita Dukaran. The 7 murder suspects are appearing in court as they've been caught. And I'm glad they've been caught, but apparently she was going to blow the whistle on corruption, and then 7 people were hired to do the job and take her out. And the ANC has long been suspected of mob killings, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal with Inkatha Freedom Party supporters. I'm not talking about in the 1980s. I'm talking about recently. There have been reports of that, and there have also been reports of more moderate ANC members, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, being the victims of hit-and-run attacks. And you cannot convince me that the ANC is not behind something like that, because the ANC, they're trying to suspend the elections. And you guys know how careful I am with the COVID-19, But I voted in the 2020 presidential election with the COVID-19, and here's how we did it. People wore a mask. Vicus DeBeer says they've always and have and always will be a terrorist organization. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they have for a long time. I will say that, particularly since 1961. Her phone was allegedly used to log into and disable her home camera system. That is crazy. I mean, that's an extrajudicial hit. It's an extrajudicial killing is basically what it is. And that is a sad situation. And this lady's a hero for blowing the whistle, trying to tackle government corruption. And then this happens. And we'll see what sentence these 7 people get, but I don't think these 7 people, even though they pulled the trigger, they were hired by somebody. And Cyril Ramaphosa has really not cracked down on corruption. 6 charges, 1 was not pending further investigation. Well, that's crazy. But with the ANC in charge, nothing surprises me anymore. But what I was going to say is I voted in the 2020 presidential election. We all wore masks outside, and we waited in line outside, typically a lot of social distancing. You went inside, you were inside for about 15 or 20 minutes, and if you go inside a ventilated building, and this was before I was vaccinated, if you go inside a ventilated building and you're only in there for about 15 minutes or less, I think I was in there for 10 minutes, actually, and you vote, it's a quick process. They got us in and out of the building. There is no reason the municipal elections need to be postponed. And the IEC, the ANC pushing these municipal elections to be postponed, plus a lot of their fascist lockdown measures, are only a reason because the ANC is almost certain they're going to get unelected because there's a big split faction between the pro-Zuma faction of the ANC and the pro-Ramaphosa faction. So the ANC declaring martial law for this COVID is the only way the ANC is going to be able to stay in power. Now, with that being said, if the ANC legally wins this next election, then I don't know what people have to do to convince the ANC to people to not vote for the ANC. In a lot of rural areas, clean water is not being delivered. There was a segment of that in the Limpopo province. Service deliveries are a disaster. Crime, rape, the economy are all-time disasters. The economy was going downhill before the lockdown, where before the COVID and before the lockdown. The South African rand was in junk status. So I don't know what it's going to take to get the ANC voted out of power. If people are still voting for the ANC despite all this stuff, then like I said, South Africa is your home if you want to stay, but I would encourage people to immigrate because it's just, South Africa's not going to get better as long as the ANC is in power. Plain and simple. South Africa's not going to get better as long as the ANC is in power. So, I pray that justice is done for this lady, because this is just a sad, sick, sadistic situation, and it was an extrajudicial killing. Now, as you guys know, CNN reported that the U.S. had sent 2.2 million vaccines Pfizer vaccines to South Africa. But if people want to get the vaccine in South Africa, Pfizer's not a bad choice. I got the Pfizer. I'm fine. Same as my dad, but Johnson & Johnson vaccine has still been proven to be the best vaccine against the South African strand. And so I saw where the SABC said many Joburgers were braving the cold to go get the COVID-19 vaccine, and only 2 of the people that drove through the drive-thru had bad reactions, but within 20 minutes or so, they were fine and released. Now, before I go any further with that, okay, Here's the thing with this. Okay, yes. There have been over 60,000 cases of adverse reactions, but over 160 million people in the U.S. have gotten the vaccine, so the chance is less than 1%. Now, you go to deaths or serious injuries, which are about 97,000 out of about 150 million. Okay, the chances of that is like 0.003. And if you don't want to take those odds, then don't. But I was going to tell you, I was going to I was going to tell you, I was going to take a chance with the vaccine more than I was with the COVID-19 because I had a distant relative, and it was in the papers. You can see it. His name is David Sessoms, like a fourth or fifth cousin of mine. Good guy. I knew him. Well, he was an anti-vaxxer. And one day he got the COVID, was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he died. And a lot of stuff he made on his deathbed, and this just happened a few days ago, actually, when he died, I should say a week ago. He would call and text people and say he was wrong. That he would say, go get the vaccine. And I have seen that firsthand. I have seen people, and then now one guy I know that died of the COVID, yes, supposedly he had his first shot, but he was waiting for his second shot, and the drug company should do a better job of this. They should let people know, particularly now Johnson & Johnson, you're better pretty much right away. You don't have to quarantine, but if you take the Pfizer vaccine, you have to quarantine for 10 to 14 days. And after your first shot, it's 90% effective. You don't go out and just act like you have just gotten the vaccine. It takes a while to get into your system. And that's the same with the Moderna vaccine. Well, did he take it properly? That's just what I want to know there. And he may have, but he also had some underlying health issues, and he was also over 60 years old. That happened as well. But the majority of the people I know that have either died from the COVID or have almost died have been people who have not been vaccinated. And that even goes for the people who have had light cases of the COVID as well. Now, you may know differently. I know somebody, and she says they're rare cases, but her and her husband had close personal friends, and after they got the vaccine, those close personal friends had a stroke. And they didn't have stroke issues before that. And that can happen, but I said that the chances of that happening are less than 1%. Like, I have a first cousin who, her son was getting some childhood vaccines, and one of them gave him a bad allergic reaction, and he's recently been diagnosed with autism. Now, with that being said, I had several childhood vaccines, like any child, and I'm fine. I had several vaccines before I could go to the Dominican Republic. I had to be a missionary for a little while, and I was fine. So they do happen, but typically they're almost always rare cases. And I was going to get typhoid vaccines and hepatitis vaccines, and going to take my chance with a vaccine before I was going to take my chance with getting those diseases before going over to the Dominican Republic. So that's that. All right. Okay. Here's where I don't know if the Delta variant has arrived in South Africa or not, because there has been a lot of bans from traveling from South Africa to other countries, but the Delta variant has originated out of India, but it has plagued the state of Mississippi. The COVID-19 Delta variant can affect kids, and 6 children so far in the state of Mississippi have died from COVID-19. And there are at least 30,000 Mississippi children that are hospitalized right now due to the Delta variant. A lot of our hospitals are overloading with people because of the Delta variant. Now, with that being said, the Delta variant, if you have the vaccine, you have a 52% chance of getting the COVID-19 if you have the vaccine, even then. But here's the key part, though. You have a 91% chance of it not being a serious case, of it just being like a bad head cold, where you won't have to go to the hospital, and where you won't have to go to the hospital, and where you won't have to, or more likely you won't die. 98% of our current cases in Mississippi are people who are unvaccinated. 89% of the hospitalizations we have are people who are not vaccinated. And 83% of the deaths we have are people who are not vaccinated. The majority of the vaccinated patients get oxygen for a couple of days in the hospital, and then they're on their way. Yes, right now Israel's hospitals are being overloaded with patients, and about half of them have the vaccine. Maybe it may be 52 to 58%. Yes, but you got to look beyond the numbers there. And I will say this: Israel's ICU is not overloaded right now. Their ICUs aren't, and they're not running. They don't have a short supply of oxygen. The majority of those vaccinated patients are over 60 years old. and they're given oxygen a few days, and typically they've left. Only 71 people in the entire nation of Israel are on the ventilator. And I'm saying this because I'm concerned about people, not because I'm trying to push anything. I promise you, I'm not getting a dime from any company saying what I'm saying. I've had relatives and friends of family who have either died or nearly died from COVID. And the one that survived was still sent home with oxygen, and she was still weak when she was sent home. I think they sent her home too early. But she told a lot of her community that she was wrong with her anti-vaccine rhetoric and encouraged people to go get the vaccine. And I mean, like I said, she almost died, and she was in very, very bad shape, and she was real healthy for her age. She almost never got sick, and she thought that would have been enough to protect her immune system, but it turned out that it wasn't. And this is also the same person. She's friends with my mom years ago, but my mom told her to get the flu shot. Well, she wouldn't do it. She thought the flu shot was, like, I guess, evil. I don't know, but she had a very bad case of the flu. And she told my mom that she was going to get the flu shot next time. Still didn't convince her with the COVID vaccine, but it did there. So, okay, the latest I heard on the news in South Africa, it's been really cold south of the equator. It's really cold right now here north of the equator. Because of the hurricane and the winds and the rain right now, it's in the 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but typically we've been in the 90 degree Fahrenheit on sunny days, and you have very thick, humid air in the southern part of the U.S. But right now in South Africa, I hear you guys are cold. I saw the video of the vaccine center in Johannesburg, South Africa, and a lot of people were wearing winter clothes, and it looks like it's freezing over there. And I want to ask you, does it snow in South Africa? Are there any parts of South Africa that get snow? There's really not too many parts here that get snow. Now, it gets cold in our winter months of December and January, but it's typically like a windy cold. I've lived down south almost all my life, and we have only gotten snow 2 or 3 times my whole life. Now, I'm not sure about South Africa. I do know in South Korea, where I lived in Jeonju, snow was very, very unusual, but the first year I was there, they got snow. And the typical thing was in Jeonju, South Korea, was if couples break up and it was like never going to get back together, they would say, we'll get back together when it snows in Jeonju, which means it hardly ever snows. But Seoul, South Korea, which is about 4 hours north of Jeonju, gets snow all the time. So they plowed the road. So when they salt and plow the road. So I'd take the bus from Jeonju to Seoul and then see a lot of snow on the snow-covered mountain. I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah. So you guys stay warm out there. It looks like it is really, really, it's really cold in South Africa, judging what I've seen on the SABC News. Now, the drive-through vaccine center in Gauteng that the SABC put together, and that the SABC and the Gauteng provincial government had put that, and I think the city of Johannesburg helped out as well. Here's the thing, okay? I do support it. You guys know how I feel about the vaccine, but here's the thing. The only question I do have is, why was this brought out now? Because about 8 to 10 months ago, the Mississippi National Guard had drive-through vaccine centers, and you could go in and you could get it for free. But it wasn't during an election year. It was during the pandemic, and our governor, Tate Reeves, had just gotten elected like 6 months ago. No, he got elected 2019. It's going to be a ways for his next election, over 2 years. The SABC and the Gauteng province did not put this stuff together until recently, when the municipal elections may be occurring. So that's what sometimes the ANC will do. They'll do things for the people at the very last minute to get votes. Erica says it sometimes snows in a couple of places, but that has been in more places than usual. Even Hillcrest near Durban has. So yeah, from what I've heard, South Africa has had an unusually cold winter, and that people are just tired of the winter, and they're ready. I don't know if this is going to be your summer season coming up. No, it's going to be your fall. I think typically south of the equator and north of the equator, we have the same fall seasons typically, but the summer seasons. No, hold up. No, it won't be fall. It'll be spring, excuse me. And you guys are ready for spring to get here, because it's been an unusually cold winter for South Africa. But yet, global warming is a huge problem. I don't think so many South Africans would agree that global warming is an issue right now, because it has been unusually cold from what people have told me in South Africa. But yeah, so yeah, okay. So the ANC has a tendency, and this is like this with ESCOM. They'll order a bunch of coal, and then the lights will be on for 2 months straight, and then people think, oh, the ANC's got it right this time. Let's vote them in again. And I'm just wondering if the ANC is doing that with the SABC drive-through vaccine center. I hope not, but the ANC is typically interested in one thing, and the one thing is power. And prime example, in a public school, and it looked like a pro-ANC area, and this one kid, was unnecessarily, I mean, you don't ever do it, hit by a grade, not a cement truck, but stuff that smooths out concrete. And all the teachers went in at one time to get the COVID-19 vaccine. They could have easily went one at a time to be watching those kids instead of just going all at once. And then a grade comes in, hits the boy. He liked to be called Cyril because he admired Cyril Ramaphosa and he wanted to be the president of South Africa one day. Well, the kid was hit by a grade, and a grader. The kid was hit by a grader, and it's just sick. And all the teachers need to be fired, and the school needs to be sued for this, and the government needs to be sued for this situation. This grader comes in, hits the kid, and where are the teachers? Okay, they could have went in one at a time to get the COVID-19 vaccine, or they could have stayed after hours to get it, because typically when you get it, they want you to wait 10 or 15 minutes before, to make sure you don't have an immediate allergic reaction. And that is just outright nuts and outright crazy that a kid gets hit by a grader while waiting for his parents outside of school. And God bless these parents. I really feel sorry for them. They're having to go, lose their child at such a young age. And that just shows you the ANC's incompetency with education. And then we know that they're in the rural areas, there is still not running water in a lot of those schools, and that people are having to use the bathroom in pit latrines. And that one, you guys know, it made international news years ago, that one kid died because he fell into a pit latrine and couldn't get out. He basically drowned in piss and shit. Sick, sadistic situation with what had happened there. So, but none of this is going to change until the ANC is voted out. And it'll be interesting to see if the ANC and the EFF go into coalition together, which I firmly believe that they will, because the EFF said they wanted to oust Jacob Zuma, but then once Jacob Zuma got arrested for, not on corruption charges, he got arrested for failure to appear in court. Then the EFF semi-encouraged the looting and protested Jacob Zuma's arrest. So, and it seems like Julius Malema and Jacob Zuma have made amends. So the EFF may go into coalition with the ANC. It wouldn't shock me if they did, because the EFF are nothing more than a bunch of political opportunists. A lot of them should be in jail right now because of the VBS bank scandal. I mean, they just should be. I mean, they should be in jail with the VBS bank scandal, particularly both Floyd Shivambu and Julius Malema. It's obvious that they knew about it, knew what was going on, and they're still walking around scot-free. So if the EFF is not in conjunction with the ANC, then the ANC is the most incompetent bunch of people you will ever see in government. But I do believe that they are in conjunction with the ANC, and I do believe that, I do think that the ANC is not going to be the majority party anymore, but I think it's, as a teacher, you're an employee of the state, so if you sue, they must sue the Department of Education, and all teachers will be financially liable. Well, then that's just crazy. I'm not talking about it as a teacher. I'm talking about that the kids' parents need to sue the Department of Education. They need to sue the school, and they need to sue the government, the kids' parents. I'm not talking about the teachers. The teachers in this case were incompetent. They all rushed in there to get their COVID-19 vaccine when they could have went one at a time. And when you are a teacher, your students are your priority. And you do not leave those students unattended in a dangerous area. And then on top of that, the guy that accidentally hit the kid with the grader, he had been an employee with the state and with the school for 15 years. Now, sometimes things can jump right in front of you and you don't have time to change course. Sometimes it happens as a driver. I can get that. But teachers do not go in there. Your students are your priority. If you're a teacher and you want that vaccine that bad, stay after hours and go get the vaccine. That is it's just asinine that it happened that way. And it's just, and props to Chris Wyatt for reporting it. He reported it before I did, but I just think the subject needs to get out. And which is another thing with the Delta variant. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. South Korea, 90% of their cases are new cases. Not 90% of their cases total, 90% of their new cases are coming from the Delta variant, which is why it's important for people that have the vaccine. They still out and about need to wear a mask, and they need. You can have a 52% chance of catching it, but if you do, typically it's just that head cold if you've been vaccinated. If you've not been vaccinated, that's a different story. That's true. In education law, as part of my degree, we also had similar. Gotcha. I gotcha. And like I said, but what do you expect though when the education system is a 30% pass rate? 30 was like an F- when I was in school. Okay, and I wasn't the smartest student in my class. 30% pass rate, you're gonna have. You obviously don't have to have the most competent teachers if you have a school system with a 30% pass rate. Okay? That doesn't mean that all South African teachers are incompetent. No, that does not mean that at all. But what that does mean is they obviously have lowered their standards of who they will hire in the future with a 30% pass rate. But anyways, I'm going to end it there. It's typically 40 minutes. I don't typically go an hour. I typically go 40, 45 minutes. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope everybody is doing well. Thanks again for the like buttons, and thanks for tuning in. Hope everybody